Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch You Want, and thanks for logging on. Today, we are looking at the IWC Portuguese F.A Jones Limited Edition, reference 544201 43 millimeters in 18 karat rose gold. This watch is one of 1,000 made in 18 karat rose gold for a special 2005 tribute to IWC's American-born founding father, F.A Jones himself. Now, on the wrist, you can see this watch reads like a traditional 43 millimeter IWC Portuguese, or Portugieser as it's sometimes known. Now, just 12 millimeters thick, the watch is actually exceptionally compact and sits flat on the wrist. Also exceptionally comfortable. You see the characteristic short lugs, a design technique that IWC pioneered years before the likes of Hublot or Audemars Piguet broke into the big watch realm. The Portuguese, prototyped in 1939, really was the first oversized watch designed to house a hyper-accurate pocket watch movement, and so IWC pioneered all of the ergonomic features that would later become commonplace to make huge watches wearable on normal human wrists. And you can see on my wrist, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference. The strap actually splays out on both sides, so although this watch is huge in diameter, it actually wears quite compact, vertically and laterally, so you can wear this on a smaller wrist, possibly even just under 6 inches or 15 centimeters in circumference. It's got the precious metal pull so you can feel the heft, but it's not oppressively heavy, given that both obviously the dial and the case back are broad sapphire inserts. Now, one of the characteristics of every IWC Portuguese aesthetically is that the dial dominates. You can see how narrow the bezel really is when viewed from directly overhead, and in the classic 1930s fashion, the lugs themselves not only have tremendous tumble home, and you can see it from this angle, but they actually slope off to both sides, but they also taper and integrate into the case, creating a beautiful longitudinal flow from the terminus of the lugs into the flanks of the case and then out the other side just as they came in. A beautiful watch with a beautiful sense of proportion. It's matched by a beautiful alligator strap. Now in this case there is a little bit of bolstering near the lugs, not much, and it tapers off very quickly to allow for flexibility. You have rectangular alligator scale with a beautiful monotone stitch and folded sides. It feels outrageously comfortable on the wrist. The quality is exceptionally high. It's a beautiful piece for a beautiful timepiece. Now on the back, brown, very soft calfskin leather. The watch features a very traditional and beautifully complementary rose gold pin buckle. Very spare, very discreet, very well suited to a watch where the watch head itself is the icon and the highlight. Now, key aesthetic features of the case itself feature contrasting finish, polished on the case back, polished on the upper flanks of the case, polished on this very distinctive, you can see concave, almost dished bezel. Let me try to give you a good sense of it. I'll put my hand behind, probably easier to see how the bezel actually slopes inward rather than upward and outward. It's concave rounded, and you can see that beautiful brushed flank that continues out to the sweep of the lugs on both sides. There's a great deal of contrast, even though the side profile of the watch is quite spare. IWC makes the most of what is there. Beautiful onion-style crown. This is a hand-wind reference, so you're going to have a lot of tactile contact here. IWC makes sure that the contact point itself is wonderful to touch, and you can hear the ratchet of that manual wind movement. Sounds beautiful, feels a treat in the hand. If you're going to wind this watch and it has a power reserve of 46 hours, make the contact point and the act of winding a true pleasure. IWC does that. Now the dial, as the centerpiece of the watch, receives special treatment here. Characteristic original 1939 Portuguese features include the beautiful Arabic numerals all the way around, small seconds at 6 o'clock, a beautiful vintage sector or train track style chapter ring around the small seconds. You have rose gold hands, Breguet style rose gold hands, to match the rose gold case, and a gorgeous white lacquer that's lustrous and beautiful and really shines. It has just as much gleam and glamour and appeal as the polished rose gold itself. Now all of the numerals themselves are painted on with a beautiful rich brownish gold, almost bronze paint that's a gorgeous tone in contrast to the white base, and of course a full minute track in black around the outside. It's spare, it's beautiful, it's traditional, and it absolutely works. It belongs. And of course, the discreet F.A Jones signature at 12 o'clock to remind you that this is not just a beautiful modern interpretation of IWC's iconic Portuguese, but a loving tribute to F.A Jones, the American who journeyed from Boston to Schaffhausen to found Eastern German-speaking Switzerland's most famous watch manufacturer. And as a watchmaker himself, F.A Jones introduced a new family of pocket watch movements to the Swiss scene. The so-called Jones calibers, designed during the 1860s and 1870s, formed the foundation of movements that IWC uses to the present day. In fact, many of the original 1930s and 1940s Portuguese references used movements descended directly from those original Jones calibers. So for the F.A Jones limited edition of 1,000 watches in rose gold, 500 in platinum, and 3,000 in steel, a special caliber 98290 pocket watch was developed with elements of the original Jones calibers and characteristics of 19th century pocket watch movements. Now you can see there's a gorgeous finish around the periphery of this 3/4 plate, itself characteristic of pocket watches, but that finish represents the original damaskining seen on original pocket watch movements of the Jones family from Schaffhausen. You see the extended arrow adjustment index, known among IWC collectors as the Jones index. Incredibly long, it allows for precise regulation of the movement itself. Now, with 18 jewels, the recreation of chaton-style jewel holders along the drivetrain, a big, slow-beating balance, and what seems like acres of tight perlage machine turning along the base plate, and simulated 19th century engraving of the balance staff itself, this watch is both the image of elegance and a beautiful, historically accurate tribute to the kind of calibers Jones created in his time. It's also a wonderful modern movement in its own right, with a nice, slow-beating, giant balance. You can see the size of that balance. I mean, quite honestly, it's bigger than the battery in most quartzes. It's almost the size of the ratchet wheel on top of the mainspring barrel here. It's simply immense, and beating at a very traditional 18,000 vibrations per hour, you really get a good look at its arms, at its counterweights along its periphery as it beats, and you can see almost in slow motion the movement, the oscillations of the pallet and the pallet stones and the pallet lever just below that huge balance. You can see the escapement wheel turning along. You can see the fourth wheel rotating slowly beside it. It's almost like a case study in watchmaking methodology and technology circa the late 19th century. A beautiful image in its own right. It's very instructive into the actual mechanical principles of a traditional Swiss lever escapement and traditional pocket watch architecture. You can learn a lot about watchmaking just by looking at this movement, and I can't think of many finer ways to spend time with your watch. But inasmuch as this watch is equally attractive on both sides, and watches are meant to be worn, this watch would take pride of place in just about any collection of IWC's finest references. It embodies the heritage of F.A Jones, the continuity of the iconic Portuguese watch, and of course IWC's century-plus experience manufacturing full-scale traditional pocket watch movements. There's a lot to be said about this watch, and with only 1,000 made, many can speak, but only a few can enjoy the pleasure on the wrist. This is the IWC Portuguese F.A Jones Limited Edition, reference 544201, 43 millimeters in 18 karat red gold, available on our website, Watch You Want.